So this was in 2008.
2008, yeah. I think it would have been in June, I think. Second biggest city in Iowa.
Wow.
A lot of them were really, it was really kind of the flood that got them involved in politics and, like kind of current events and stuff. I think that at the time, the way our city government was set up, the mayor was kind of, I don't want to say like a figurehead, like just a figurehead, but it wasn't as powerful of a position.
Oh, so she's just kind of there, but everybody else ran the.
Yeah, it was kind of like she was mayor in name, but it wasn't as powerful a position as in other city governments because of the way it was all set up.
Was the city council running the show?
Well,
who would you say are the powerful influences here in Cedar Rapids?
Well, we have two local news stations here in town. There's KGAN, which is News Channel 2, and then KCRG, Channel 9. And they're the two main news outlets. And then I think KCRG is affiliated with the Gazette, which is our main newspaper.
And are they slanted somewhat, do you think, or is it fair and balanced as it's supposed to be, the news?
Well, in my opinion, they're not. They're not. I mean, they're fairly, like most places, I would say. They're kind of, they do tend to sort of favor the more powerful viewers and supporters. But there was an actual camp.
There was.
That was in a. I'm not positive about this, but I think it was in a flood zone that was being contested because, a lot of people were living there, and it was perhaps under threat to be taken over and redeveloped. I think a lot of people around here realized that what had happened was was like a freak occurrence, like a 500-year flood. It's not the kind of thing you necessarily want to move off the floodplain, because it's like, we're talking like an average of every 500 years.
Right. And now that you've had it, it's probably a safe place to be.
It was said that that some of those buildings were just, were damaged beyond repair, but, there are varying opinions on that, and those opinions can be influenced by this or that. So there isn't a whole lot to do here, especially after the flood. Like a lot of the things that we did have were kind of washed away, but
so it hit the cultural part pretty heavy. So what was affected? You said there was a museum down there?
Yeah, there was the CSPS, which is back in operation, fortunately. But there was the library, there was the science station, which is like a kind of like a kids museum dedicated to science, and it had an IMAX theater attached to it. That's gone.
So you didn't get the library back?
The library is going to be rebuilt somewhere else. I don't remember where, but it was a very nice building. It had I have an article posted up on sort of my bulletin board at home. That's it has a picture of in the center of the building. There's this really neat spiral staircase that I guess was designed by a fairly well-known architect. It was a pretty big deal at the time when it was built. So, really nice building. Oh man, my childhood. That whole area was like a huge piece of my past was just washed away in a day. Not everybody knows what that's like to have your hometown just kind of obliterated like that.
Yeah, except Katrina, who obviously.
Governor of Iowa is Terry Branstad. He was actually governor when I was a kid. I think that he was governor when I was born. And for my early childhood, he was governor, and then he was out for a while, and he just got reelected fairly recently, like last time around.
Wow.
And so, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's consecutive years. You can't do too many, but if you leave and then come back, wow.
That's one thing I think really needs to change. Is I think that we need some strict term limits put in for. He's this young, sort of gangly-looking guy. Like I told you, he looks a little bit like Abraham Lincoln. He has that kind of look. He's I don't know. I sort of got a kick out of watching his interview because, he's in 20. I think he's like 23 years old, and he got involved in the Occupy movement, and like the horrible stuff going on in Wisconsin with their attacks on collective bargaining and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's he really got himself involved, and it's a good example of how the Occupy movement is going to have long-term effects, because a lot of 20-somethings who were involved with it one way or another are going to go on, and they're going to be influenced by what they did back then.
The issues that we have as a country aren't specifically Republican or Democrat. It's about money. We have too much money influencing our politicians, our laws. When they came out with Citizens United and said corporations are people, man, that was just crazy. That's what got me involved, seeing 700 people get arrested on the Brooklyn Bridge and thinking, how the hell does that happen? I mean, where in the world does it say that you can't protest, But it's becoming a lot harder, and they're making it really tough, and the cops are cracking down. And, with all the cities, because we've been to 88, this is 89, maybe 90, I don't know, I kind of lost track in the last couple, but you think with all the cities we've seen, and the feeling of the people is the same, then why don't we have health care? Everybody wants it. Why isn't marijuana legal? Everybody wants it. Most people, I would say the percentage. You can't justify alcohol that it's better than weed, and I mean, I don't think any is good to excess, but I don't see weed killing people, I don't see people driving drunk and on weed and maiming somebody, and it happens all the time with alcohol, and yet we have big banners and in some places billboards advertising alcohol.
Right.
So.
And even making the more dangerous drugs illegal just makes those drugs more dangerous.
Right.
Because it creates this whole underground where
right.
you fear for your freedom and your safety.
You think they would have learned that with prohibition, that it doesn't work.
Yeah. Public school is very regimented. There's a lot of memorizing of facts, but there isn't a lot of, like, say, teaching of morals, and to actually care about each other. There was a lot of bullying at the school that I went to. There was a lot of, there was bullying. There was a lot of just. It was in a really small town, so it was a lot of like bored kids who really didn't seem to give a damn about each other, and that was one of the reasons why I was one of the less popular ones, was because I was raised to believe that if you're friends with somebody, you're nice to them, and that was just not. That wasn't the way a lot of the other kids were raised. They weren't taught, you need to actually give a damn about each other because we're all in this together, And mm-hmm. I think that if there is going to be a revolution, it has to be a revolution of consciousness. Well, I mean, imagine what kind of country we would be if we could be free from making decisions based on fear. Like the fear of, like, well, if I do this and I go to school for this, what happens if I want to do something else later and I can't afford it? What if when you can't become the person that you want to become because you're afraid of a lack of resources, and a lack of support.
If we could allow children to really do what they do best and do it well, and not have it be a burden financially, I can't imagine how great a country this would be. Mm-hmm. It has to benefit the country that we have bright, caring kids that are doing what they love and not just taking drugs to go to school to memorize a test because they got an exam the next day, but actually get to know something and want to be in it. And I think it's so messed up right now.
They're not allowed to, like, really follow their passions. It's all very
right.
It's all very standardized, like
right.
Like, say if you are a whiz, like a math whiz, and you're stuck in an English class, and you don't. I mean, you couldn't write a poem to save your life, because
right.
it's just not what you're wired for,
Yeah, but yet we want them to. We want everybody to go through this template, of education system, and I'm not sure why that is. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's not healthy.
Control the masses, train them how to work, and do their bidding for you. And
Yeah.
it's fuck the government, fuck the country. It's
Go get a
who has
job.
the money, and how can I make the most money?
Yeah.
So we don't want to teach people to think, because if they think, things will change.
Critical thinking.
We have to teach them how to. We have to program them, to do what we want them to do. Well, not we, but
The government.
or
Yeah.
the big corporations or whatever. Because if you imagine if you produce a generation of thinkers.
Yeah. Solutions might appear.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Did you go to college?
I did.
High school?
I went to Kirkwood, which is a community college here in town. I went there for 4 years, and earned an Associate of Arts and an Associate of Science. I still have to check back and see if that last class that I took, if I passed it or not. Because if I didn't, then I didn't quite earn the Associate of Science yet. But if I did, then I did. But I'm almost kind of afraid to find out. But I usually just tell people that I have 2 degrees.
And so, what was your passion? What were you following?
I would say if I had to pick a passion, it would be poetry. I write a lot of poetry.
Oh, good.
I do a lot of writing in general. So I would say words, writing, poetry, activism, joining causes. I would say that if I have any passions, I would say that those would be it.
I like the fact that young people are getting involved, although they don't believe in the system. They think the system's severely broken, which it is, and that there's no hope, and that we need something completely different. Were you part of the Occupy? I mean, did you go to any of the meetings?
No, I wasn't involved in Occupy Cedar Rapids, at least not in person. I mean, I was like following the whole thing online and sharing and writing all kinds of stuff online. But at the time, I had a pretty demanding job.
If you have a police record or you're a felon, you can't run for office. But if you're in office, you commit as many felonies
commit a
as you want
felon.
to get away with it.
Yeah.
So stuff like that doesn't.
I know, the
necessarily
system
help.
sucks.
It's a big problem.
Yeah. We need some structural change, Somebody said, it should be like a jury duty. You do your 2 years, you go in, you get compensated well, but you don't get a life pension and all the things. I mean,
Right.
You just like everybody else.
There shouldn't even be such a thing as a career politician.
No.
It's not a career path.
Yeah, it's scary, actually.
Supreme Court justice holds people
Life.
to 100 and they're there until they die.
Yes, they're there till they die.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And some of them shouldn't be there. 2 in particular I can think of offhand that shouldn't be there. Which is why Citizens United got voted in.
The older generation writes it off because they're too scared to admit that we don't live by the same rules anymore. It's not like it was in the 90s or 80s or 70s. You can be ruined much more easily now by the decisions that you make than any other time in the past. Up to the Great Depression.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought about it. Yeah.
They say the sort of cliche is get a job, But even if you do get a job, it's like a make job that doesn't even pay you enough to live on, let alone pay off your student loans. So you have to end up moving back in with your parents, and that's not even an option for everybody. Some people can't, for one reason or another. Maybe their parents are in trouble. They can't even do that. The system's been it's been breaking for a long time, and now we're at the point where it actually is shattered.
Right, and nobody knows what to do. And they just keep thinking that if we just keep doing the same thing, it's all going to be better.
People know what to do.
The government does it.
Doesn't implement it. Yeah.
Right. There were towns we visited, they had solution groups, where they actually sat down and thought about things, and little think tanks, and, I mean, there's some really great ideas. One of which is the school thing, which I think needs to change. Teachers across this country are fed up. Tino and I have met now 2 people who have IQs higher than 130, who are brilliant and got shuffled through the school system as less than adequate because they couldn't, like you say, they were really good at science, couldn't grasp the English.
I think here in America we're still kind of stuck in the Wild West mentality, which, is like you're on your own, basically, and that that's good somehow, and it's not. We need to be compassionate and take care of each other, because that's what Northern Europe's doing, and they're surpassing us in just about every way. And I mean, you've just got to get over, because there are good things that went along with that, like, you know, like individualism and stuff, but you can really go overboard with that kind of stuff, and get to the point where you're like you're basically acting in this borderline psychotic way, you know, where like helping somebody is like a sign of weakness.
I know. I don't get it. Like, why not
So
have
about
health care for
DDD.
everybody? Why should people risk losing their house if they get sick?
And another thing, this false idea that like in the past things were more like what the Republicans wanted to be like. In the 1950s, the tax rate, the highest tax rate was 90%. 90%, and now it's like 37% and going down. Obama's actually like, he signed a bill, and I think that it's going to get rid of some corporate tax loopholes, which is good, but it's also going to lower the highest tax rate.
So you net out, really, right? He's going to net out. He's going to reduce and then give, and then you know, we're no further ahead.
You know, I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger. He said something recently. He said, like, what would Reagan do? You know, that's what we need to be asking ourselves. What would Reagan do? And I can tell you what he'd be doing. He'd be doing pretty much what Obama's doing right now, because that's how far to the right everything has shifted. You know, it's like the Democrats are now like the center right, and the Republicans are now like the borderline fascists. I really think that the answer is voting third party, because even if the point isn't so much electing a third party candidate, it's sending the message to the other two parties
Exactly.
that you're not gonna, you no longer consider them, you know, they're your only two choices.
Right.
It's like
That's
a
what we
write-in,
need to
like
do.
You want to write in. I mean, the point is, you could put a lot of people for write-ins. I don't think anybody's going to win, but it'll send a message to the voter.
We need
Yeah.
to send that. We
You
need
know.
to send that message. We need to do it big time, like
Maybe
across the
they'll shake them
board.
up.
Why aren't we firing the whole lot of them? We can't even get rid of Scott Walker, for crying out loud.
Yeah, they built a new, like a new county jail or something, and put this great sheriff's name on it. And 30 days later, they found out he was giving young boys crystal meth for sex and shit like that. So he did 30 days in jail, and they took his name off the
Right.
jail.
And you got Bradley Manning sitting in solitary confinement for 500 days, total of almost 800 days in prison.
And that
hasn't
is
gone to trial yet.
that is torture too. Solitary
It is.
confinement.
Yeah, it is.
There's
It
no doubt about it. In
is.
fact, it's one of the worst kinds of torture. I mean,
But can
it's-
you
it's not even
imagine?
what?
Can you imagine being in a room that's 6 by 10 or whatever the hell the size that is for 500 days? You would be crazy.
The fact that
Should've
we're
already-
doing that alone is reason enough to be ashamed of this country.